And now that I'm getting a little bit older, I will always sort of admire and push and help give young people the insight, the courage, the confidence to not believe in conventional thinking. Let me share a quick example with you that'll just take a couple minutes, and then I'll explain how and in what way you can use it for yourself. So, and believe me, I look a lot better on paper. I'm only a middle-class person, but I own 2 apartments. There's one apartment that I live in, the one in New York, and I also own one apartment in New Jersey, just kind of near where I grew up, that I, rent out to a tenant. So that's always been an investment property. I never lived in it. And I bought my first apartment. Wow, it's been a while now. I bought it when I was still in my 20s, my late 20s, but still nonetheless. And I actually had a judgment at the time on my credit report. So when I was in my early 20s, maybe 21, something like that, 22, I had to have surgery. I had a pilonidal cyst at the base of my spine, which is really, it sounds a lot worse than it is, but it is incredibly painful. I was only working part-time. I was a full-time college student. And, so the bills, the medical bills kind of started to mount. And it was a little hard to, kind of keep up with them. So long story short, unfortunately, I kind of started missing payments on that. And, they took me to collections and, I wound up with a judgment. I eventually paid it. But as you know, those judgments basically last on your credit report for a whole 7 years. And the point I'm trying to make is, people say, especially when you're really young, in your early 20s and even in your mid 20s, a lot of people who are older than you, they always want to kind of give you this conventional advice. And I would say, don't believe in the conventional advice and don't believe in the hype. Sure, you have to be based in reality, but at the same time, if you have certain goals and on paper, people say, oh, you can't do that because you have a judgment and whatever. So I bought my first apartment when I had a judgment, and then 16 months later, when I still had a judgment, I got a second mortgage, meaning a completely separate mortgage for a completely different property, this one that I live in New York, and I got a mortgage, I got approved for that as well. And in both situations, I still had a judgment on my credit report. I didn't, I wound up getting rid of that judgment maybe about 2 years after I bought my apartment in New York. And the whole point is, if I sort of kind of went with the conventional thinking of what a lot of older people say and, what maybe, kind of dads are sort of infamous for saying this, oh, you either can't get approved or, if you get approved, you're going to have an incredibly high interest rate. So I got approved for both mortgages. I did have a 6% interest rate at the time, which, is it high? Yeah, it's high. But then a couple of years later, because I had adjustable mortgage rates on both my apartments that I'm still obviously paying, it went down to like 2.7% a couple of years after that. My advice to you is, don't believe the hype. Don't believe in conventional thinking. I've always been a big believer in that. And now that I'm getting a little bit older, I will always sort of admire and push and help give young people the insight, the courage, the confidence to not believe in conventional thinking and to, make sure that if it's a goal that you want, and even on paper, if people say, well, you can't get a mortgage when you have a judgment, you can't get a mortgage for this reason or that reason, go for it. And you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish. Don't let conventional thinking get in your way, and don't let the thoughts of other people, and don't let their inability and don't let their lack of confidence interfere and get in the way of your plans. So send me your comments and questions, and each week you'll get a chance to win a copy of one of my books, your choice, either my book on presentation skills or business writing skills.